So I'm working my way through Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, and I had just finished the second book, Words of Radiance, in the Stormlight Archive. And everybody told me I have to read Edgedancer before I read Oathbringer. So I did, and was it a good idea? I made a video when I was about halfway through the book, and I made some predictions on what I thought was going to happen next. So here I'm going to talk about what happens in the second half of the book, whether I think it was worth the read, and whether any of those predictions did come true. So we rejoin the story, and there is a murder in the marketplace. And it's one of the more brutal and abrupt murders that I've seen inside of the Cosmere. It is darkness murdering a girl who had stolen some fruit in cold blood. He also says something very interesting to one of the other people in the market. That person in shock says, "Tashi above," which I assume is kind of us saying, "Oh my Lord," or "Oh my God." And he replies, Darkness replies, as if he knows Tashi. He says, says something along the lines of, "Tashi would not care much even if he knew who you were or if he was here." Something along those lines, which makes me think, is Tashi maybe a different name for honor, or maybe one of the other heralds potentially? Just an interesting side note in the story there. So Lift follows Darkness back to his evil lair, where it becomes apparent that he's head of the Skybreakers, which is a bit confusing because I'm confused as to how their spren allowed them to act so immorally, unless they believe it is to be moral. And maybe it's only Seal and the Honor spren who have this rule where they can't break their word, or something along those lines, so maybe that's not as confusing as I thought. But either way, it is sad to see the Knights Radiant on what I think at least is the wrong side of the war, or the wrong side of what is going on, essentially on Darkness's side, Nale's side. So that was sad to see. But when she follows Darkness back to his evil lair, what we see him talk about is the fact that the Voidbringers were going to be coming from somewhere else. What he actually says is, without honor to regulate the relationship, the Voidbringers can make the jump between worlds. Now, this is confusing. If the Voidbringers were truly the Parshendi, then surely this herald, who is presumably tens of thousands of years old, would know and would recognize that. So it's starting to make me think that the Voidbringers, and as far as we know, the Parshendi have only ever been on one world. They haven't been to other worlds in the Cosmere, and they also haven't been to the cognitive realm, as far as we know. So it's starting to make me think that actually maybe the Void spren, or the evil spren, or whatever those spren are called, the ones that are evil, that seem to have gotten into the Parshendi, maybe those are the actual Voidbringers, which is, again, that's not a satisfactory answer, but it's another clue in the direction of what we need, because I'm not convinced that the Parshendi are the Voidbringers. I think really it's these spren that have gotten into them. And maybe it's similar to Mistborn, where the spren that got into them, or with hemalurgy, it as a side effect, it opens them up to the influence of somebody else who is the Voidbringer. But if it is these spren, if they got into a Chasm Fiend, for example, or if they got into whatever becomes the Thunderclasts, I mean, maybe that's what people actually think of as Voidbringers. So maybe that's what he saw previously, and he doesn't quite recognize them in the Parshendi. So I don't know, not a full conclusion, but it's exciting that we're getting more clues in that direction. So we know that Darkness and the Skybreakers are going to try and exterminate or eliminate another budding Knights Radiant. So we're following his two assistants, the Skybreakers, thinking that they are going to kill the old man who is outside of the orphanage. And when we arrive there, we get a welcome and pretty disturbing surprise. And this is definitely the most interesting part of the book by a country mile. So the Skybreakers, who we assume are going to be committing murder, in fact are defeated pretty soundly and without too much sign of a struggle by a strange wriggling creature. This self-proclaimed sleepless, a wriggling mass of Kremlings that doesn't sleep. Well, at least not all of him sleeps at the same time. Of course, I'm speaking of Arklow the Sleepless, in my opinion, the star of this book. So what do we know about Arklow? We know that 2 Skybreakers are absolutely no match for him. He also hints and suggests that the Heralds know not to mess with the Sleepless, meaning that their powers may far exceed the Heralds as well, which is surprising. He says, and I'm going to have to read this off my notes, "You needn't fear me. Your war is my war and has been for a millennia. Ancient Radiance named me friend and ally before anything went wrong. Nale knows to stay away from me and my kind." So that is massive. A millennia is a very long period of time, 1,000 years. So we know that the Sleepless have been on planet for a long time. Are they from this planet? I don't know. They seem by far the most alien thing that we've seen on the planet, but there are some very alien-like things on these planets. And I suppose everything's an alien to me because none of them are from Earth, right? We know that they can change their Kremlins and they can make new ones to serve like specific purposes. And we also know, he says, that some of his siblings are much more interested in humankind. So maybe I've missed some Sleepless in the book, in the story, I should say, in the series previously. And if I have, well, I can't remember it because obviously I missed it, but I'm sure somebody may let me know. But either way, it's an interesting concept that these things are here, there, and everywhere. And I'm wondering, are all Kremlins from the Sleepless? I don't think so. I think maybe they just get into the minds of the smallest creatures that are near them. Like if it was a planet with a lot of locusts, maybe they would be made of locusts. And that begs the question, what is in the middle of a Sleepless? Is there anything in the middle? Or is it just more of the small creatures? In that case, what is a Sleepless? Is it an urge? Is it an idea? Is it just a thought? Is it, I don't know. Or is there something in the middle? You know, like an organism or a being which emits these things, these urges, these ideas, these thoughts, this need to reproduce, because something intelligent is driving it, clearly. And most interesting of all, he also mentions Axes, which I believe is Axes the Collector, who is flitted in and out of the story across the last couple of Stormlight books. So how does this link? I don't know. But am I infinitely intrigued by this Sleepless? I definitely am. And it's definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye out for, because what an interesting character and concept, and how different to everything we've seen previously. So was it worth it? I would say overall, definitely yes, for a couple of reasons. Number one, in the first half of the book, I really enjoyed the simplicity and just different perspective that Lift brought, especially our relationship with Wendell. As we got to the second half of the book, and it is a small book, it's only, I think, 40,000 words. As we got to the second half, I was getting a bit bored with her perspective. It doesn't provide much nuance or information about the world around you that is easily decipherable because of the way she describes things. And it was refreshing to have her perspective, and it was different and it was childish. But, you know, any more book based on that perspective would be probably quite boring, I think, in my opinion, because it is so simplistic. And I was just getting bored when we finally got those scenes with Zeph, which I'm going to talk about soon, and the Sleepless, and obviously the final showdown with Nale as well. So I think it was properly sized and properly paced, and just as I was getting bored, we got hit with all the big reveals, and therefore I wasn't bored. The stump being the Radiant was a nice touch. Because of Lift's way of describing things, I'd kind of given up on picking up on small hints and you know, trying to see deeper into what was being said, because she describes things so strangely. So the fact that Stomp was the Radiant, the budding Radiant, that was good. That was a nice twist, something I didn't see coming. And I should have, because the clues were all there and they were very obvious. And I also read I think it was like acknowledgements at the end of the book from Brandon Sanderson. And he said the reason why he made this novel, or this novella, or this short story, sorry, is because of two reasons. Number one, he knew there was going to be a pretty drastic change in the outlook of Nale. And it might be Nail, I don't know, but Nale, darkness, essentially. And he needed an explanation for that, because darkness had been on this quest for tens of thousands of years, is what I think he said. You know, since They broke their oaths, so it was a long time ago. So it wouldn't make sense for him to have this change and become reformed without us seeing the change within the book. I want to say on camera, even though it's not on camera, but it feels like it's in camera in your head when you're reading it. So he needed these changes on record, I suppose. He also said that Lift was going to be a much bigger character further down the line. I believe he said in the Stormlight Archive, it would make sense that it was. So he wanted us to try and understand more of her motives and the reasons why she does things. And I think there's a lot more to be explored from her past. Like I made some predictions in my previous video about why she would ask for the world to stay the same from the Night Watcher. And none of those were really brought up again. We didn't get much of Lift's past, so that's something that I've completely missed in my predictions. But I would like to get more, and I think we will get more as we move forward, especially if she's going to become more of a main character further down the line. So for those two things being his motives for the book, I think 100% he achieved those, and it was short enough to be enjoyable, and we met some very interesting characters, and we had some of the characters that we know change. So one of my predictions was we were going to see Zeph, and we did, and this is one of the characters that we saw change. We knew there was going to be a big change from the end of Words of Radiance, but we see that Zeph is more philosophical. His hair is growing, and he seems to be a little bit sick and tired of Darkness's plans. And he not necessarily wants to go against Darkness, but he definitely cares more about Nightblood's opinion of Lift than he does of Darkness's quest to snuff her out, so to speak. So we see a change in Zeph, and we also see a massive change in Darkness. He realizes what's right under his nose, and that is that the desolation has begun and the Voidbringers are back. And it looks like he's now going to go and try to battle against that and potentially has some of his sanity back. So if he drags Zeph on that journey, not only will we get to see from Zeph's perspective more of Nightblood, but we get to see probably a more sane Herald, which none of them seem very sane right now. And we see what he's going to do to try and combat the desolation and the Voidbringers. And surely this Herald has a much better idea of how to directly combat that. So that storyline has now become extra interesting. So I'm looking forward to Zeph's next perspectives. I also predicted that we were going to get the next ideals from Lift, and I think we did. Again, she's confusing. I believe she said, I've spoken them, I've thought the ideals, and Wendell, eventually crumbles and grants her that she's, that she has spoken the words. So yeah, we got that. We did see Zeph. We did see another Radiant, which was the Stump. We didn't really get a glimpse into Lift's past, which is something I was hoping for and something that I did predict. I also said there's obviously a reason for the book, which isn't a bold prediction. No one writes a book for no reason. And in my head, in my prediction, I thought we were going to get either an artifact or some knowledge or a character that needs to change the rest of the Stormlight Archive. And really what we got was Arklow, which I thought was very interesting, the Sleepless. And then we also had a glimpse at reformed Zeph, even though he was kind of reformed from Words of Radiance. So that's not a surprise. It's just nice to get more info on what he's doing now. But Darkness's reformation is probably going to have the biggest repercussions on the rest of the universe. Also, my biggest prediction was that we were going to get more information on why Lift is going to be important moving forwards with regards to her ability to straddle the cognitive realm and the real world. And that wasn't touched on at all, as far as I'm aware, unless it was subtle foreshadowing. I completely missed it. So we still don't really know why the Night Watcher's abilities that she granted Lift are going to be important. But we also don't know if they always have to be important. It seems like they are. But, maybe they're random. Maybe they're just at a whim. Maybe they don't have a greater use in the universe. So maybe she just likes to eat food and it can be turned into Stormlight. So tell me, did you enjoy Edgedancer? Did you read it? Did you skip over it? Did you read it between Elantris and Oathbringer the same way I have? Or did you read it in a completely different order? Tell me your thoughts. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It massively helps the channel. And if you have somebody else who you think would enjoy the video, just send it along to them. We'd love to have them along for the ride. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Thank you.